Alright guys, so in the last video and at the first class of this week we were talking about mount attacks. We were talking about how we control our partner in mount, how we attack an Americana, and how if our partner starts to rescue that Americana, how we do a chair sit back take and start to expose their back, and we'll do back attacks and back defense in the next week in the next set of videos. So today we're going to do defense from that position, how I escape those mount positions. I'm on mount and you. Again, obviously, like we were saying in the other video, this is a really bad position in both a self-defense sense. I mean, I can punch him or elbow if it's MMA, obviously that kind of stuff. And even in jiu-jitsu, this is a bad position. I can't really attack my partner. I can only really start to, if I'm on bottom, I can really only start to try and escape. Again, my goal is always, if I'm in a bad bottom pin position, to get the better pin position for me and eventually get my legs back in front of me, to get my guard back in front of me. Because then I can attack in my guard, or I can sweep my partner, turn the tables, and then I'm starting to do the strong pinning positions. So in this position, my goal is to either get all the way to my guard back in front of me, or knock the guy over, or do an elbow escape, which we'll talk about, where I start to build my legs back in front of me. A couple of things we'll talk about here is like the general positioning. I'll just borrow you and we'll still stay on bottom. You'll see that here he's got his elbows nice and tight, you know what I mean? He keeps his elbows tight to his body, and his hands are usually around his face, you know what I mean? For Noki, this is handy. He doesn't want to have his arms easily isolated. If his hands are like out really wide, it's easier for me to isolate his arm and start attacking it like before. Same thing if I start trying to control his head or like get in on his neck, his hands are close. Especially for gi, if you end up doing gi jiu-jitsu, you want your hands close to your neck because the guy might start trying to feed in and get collar grips and start doing chokes and stuff like that. So the right positioning here is keeping your elbows nice and tight, weak T-Rex arms, and keeping your hands close enough to your neck to defend this, and usually shucking your kind of shoulders up to your neck and your chin down to make your neck as small as possible. Alright? Because a big mistake a lot of guys make when they start is their main defense from this, especially if you haven't done any training and you're like in that kind of fight or flight panic mode, is the guy starts to like extend his arms to either like, yeah, try and push me off or push me away. Again, when he does this, it's easy for me to like get that out of the way, drive his hands on the mat, and now I'm starting to isolate his arms. Or if I was like further up, guys will start to try and like bench press you up by your shoulders. We call this like zombie arms. Here he's doing like part of the work. If I start to like sit and do an arm bar, it's really easy for me to do now because he's already extending his arm. So now when I fall back, half the work's done with his arm being extended, rather than if he keeps his elbows nice and tight like he's doing here, it's easier for him to defend this position. I try and break his hands apart and isolate his arms, it's difficult. If I try to get a control of his neck and start to punch at his neck and make things uncomfortable there, it's more difficult. He's defending this position. So that's what we want to do here. We don't really ever want to be bench pressing him off. You'll see sometimes in the MMA, the guy will start like hugging the guy around his back. So if you do this, you'll see this in MMA. This is mainly so that the guy can't like, you see it's hard for me to build up to a strong position to like punch you. That's why you see this in MMA. But because I can't punch the guy anyway in jiu-jitsu, this isn't really that helpful because again, I'm going to start coming to positions where I can start to isolate arms and attack same way as before. So that's why you might see a wee bit of that in MMA, which again, if you end up transitioning to do some MMA and stuff like that, that's not necessarily wrong. If you're in a self-defense situation on bottom and the guy was really punching you in the head, you wouldn't necessarily be wrong to hold him here because it is harder for me to like pull up and like load up stronger punches. But for jiu-jitsu, I don't really want to do this. Let go again. I want to stay in this nice tight position. Elbows tight, hands nice and close. Alright, let's switch here and I'll talk about a couple of things. Good. So, we're on bottom of mount today. My opponent's in mount. There's a couple of things I want to talk about first. Again, like I said, keep all this nice and tight. A couple of things we were talking about in the last video is what if I'm bumping and going crazy and my partner's putting me in grapevines. So again, he puts his hands on the mat, he brings his hands back, and he starts to grapevine me. If I start to try and just bridge and move here, it can be really difficult. So how do I escape this position? Because I can't really escape the mount position before I escape this grapevine. Because both our mount escapes, if you don't stop grapevining me, are going to involve some amount of like turning and using my hips to either start peeling his foot or trapping an arm and doing like a big bridge in a row. And both of those require me to be able to put power through my hips. But if he's grapevining me, and I try to generate power through my hips, it's very difficult because I'm getting like stuck and my legs are getting kind of torqued out a bit. I can't really get power through my hips and I'm being kind of like immobilized and my hips are being pinned to the mat. So if I'm here, it's really difficult for me to defend. It's harder for my opponent to attack like submissions because he's got his weight through his hands and stuff I can keep tight. But again, I want to be escaping bad positions. I don't want to just be like surviving bad positions. Obviously, when you start, you'll be more surviving more than anything, but I want to be building a game where I actively escape and again, try to turn the tides of my opponent so I'm in a strong position where I can attack. So if my opponent's in this grapevine position, he goes back to these grapevines. I don't want to be kicking my legs out. By trying to circle my legs out is very difficult. I'm going to pick one leg and I'm going to kick my leg straight and drive my heel to the mat. And by straight, I mean both locking my leg out straight, but also going in the same like length of my body. So you see my body's going like this direction. I don't want to kick straight this way. My leg is still trapped. I kick straight the way my leg's pointing and I can slip that hip. Now I can just bring this foot here, step on his other foot, peel, and come back to the inside. All right, we'll circle so you can get a better angle. So if we circle this way, hopefully see my feet, not with a shovel to make sure we're on screen. So my opponent's doing my grapevine. My kick and just go like nuts. I'm not really going to go anywhere. So I'm going to kick my leg straight the way my body's going. So again, I could kick my leg straight out to the side. You see, that's still getting me trapped. So kick straight the way my body's going, like that. Especially if you come back. Especially if I do it nice and quick, I can peel. And now my other foot's going to step on the back of this heel and just pull that down. And then both my feet are going to step in the middle. I want both my feet in the middle, so not only when I want to generate power from my hips, my feet can come close to my butt, which helps me generate power. But when I do my elbow escape, I'm going to need my feet in the middle as well. One last time, nice and quick. He's got me in a grapevine. I'm going to kick straight, step on the other foot, bring both my feet in the middle. Another issue I can have, which we didn't cover in our attacking positions, we mostly sat hip over hip. But sometimes my opponent will get me in positions where instead of sitting over my hips, he looks to start opening up my elbows and sitting over my chest. This is another reason I want to keep my elbows tight. If my arms are up here and he brings his knees up into my here and starts to sit on my chest, not only if you sit up just so that I can see it perfect, not only is this more uncomfortable for me, he's like sitting on my lungs. You might be able to, he's taking a wee bit of weight off me because he's nice. You might even be able to hear there that, yeah, my voice is like changing. He's kind of like sitting on my chest uncomfortable. But also it's harder for me to escape. Because both my escapes, which we'll see if you come back and sit over my hips, are going to rely on my hips being on his hips. Whether I'm doing my bridge, now when I bridge and my hips are over his hips, I can actually affect him and move him. Or I'm doing my elbow escape, which we'll do in a second. I can find my elbow inside the line of his knee and start to execute my escape. But again, if he's sitting on my chest, if he takes the space, now when I lift my hips, he doesn't really go anywhere. If I try and get my elbows inside his knee, I just can't because he's so high up. So this is another reason I want to keep my elbows nice and tight. So if he comes back down, so that I don't give up this space under my armpits. We call that high mount. So it's very strong for my opponent. It's harder for me to defend. It's harder for me to do my escapes. It's harder for me to keep my arms from being isolated. If he tries to like isolate one of my arms, just try and push one of my arms to the mat here, it's harder in this position. He comes to like a high mount. My arms are already kind of being lifted up, so now when he does this, he's gonna find it much easier, which is bad for me. So again, that's the importance of keeping our elbows tight, but sometimes we'll scoot back this way a wee bit just because I'm gonna like shoulder walk back. Perfect. Sometimes he is gonna do that. He's either gonna be lifting and sitting on my chest, or he'll be like in the process of doing that. If this happens, I wanna be walking my shoulders back so he's back by my hips. To do that, again, I don't want my arms kind of flailing out or detached from my body so that they can be attacked. I'm gonna bring both my elbows. I'm just like bringing my hands cupped around my elbows, and my elbows are coming across the line of his waist or his hips. And what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna like rock, you see I'm stepping on my legs. I'm gonna start like rolling onto one shoulder to the other and walk my shoulders back so he comes back over my hips. When I do this, perfect. I'm using these hands to frame. They're not just staying here doing nothing, because if they do nothing, when I walk, he's just gonna keep following. Exactly. So they're not doing nothing. As I put them here, I'm extending them, I'm framing away. So as he tries to walk and follow me, I can get him further down. So again, if my opponent's able to sit high on my chest, I'm bringing my arms across. Same thing, he's sitting up here, but it would be the same thing if he was low and trying to control me. Say you have a cross face. So even if he was here, he might not be able to hear me as well. My arms are still going across the same way, and I'm doing that same shoulder walking function. I'm trying to get him nice and low here like this. All right, so we'll start talking about our escapes here. We'll scoot back just a wee bit. Right. So we'll assume that we're in this position where we got our opponents controlling our hips here, where you got a hip over hip position. We're gonna work two escapes today. First escape is called a bridge and roll, or it's also called an upa escape. And the second escape is called an elbow escape. The first escape is definitely a bit more timing based. I'm usually doing it in a scenario where I realize that my opponent is unable to base to one side. We were doing that drill at the start of the last video where my opponent had a cross face and it was more self-defense. If I start plucking and going mad, he has this hand to post out on. But if I ideally can bring him to this switch cross face, I'd say, if I can ideally bring him to this side quicker than he can pull this hand out to base, I might be able to bring him over because he's committed his ability to base on this hand by holding my neck here. So that's how our bridge and roll escape works. We're essentially we're using a situation where our opponent has committed their hand to something, whether it be a cross face or maybe it's an attack on my arm, and then bridging to that direction where he doesn't have a post. Now the difference is if I just bridge this way right now, there's nothing stopping him just pulling this hand out and putting it on the mat and control. So what's going to happen is when my opponent gets this cross face, I'm going to be coming around with my free arm. So again, I would have my elbows tight here until now, and then I'm going to come around. I'm going to be tucking, grabbing around this shoulder, and I'm going to lock my elbow in tight, and I'm going to pinch my ear to like his wrist here. So if he tries to pull his arm out here, it should be more difficult. I'm trying to trap it here, because my goal is to trap this, trap and roll kind of idea. I'm going to trap this, and now when I roll this way, he's not going to be able to post his hand on the mat to stop his weight going that direction. And I'll hopefully be able to roll him over so that I come on top. So I'm gonna grab around the shoulder, pull my elbow in tight like a chicken wing, and I'm trapping with my ear by really pinching against this wrist like this. I'm gonna be having my feet nice and close to my butt. If I ever wanna generate power through my hips, my feet come close to my butt. You should be able to see if my feet are here and I try to hip up, it's not very high. If my feet come here and I hip up, I can get a lot of power there, right? The other thing I'm going to do is my other arm here that's behind him, I'll show this from another angle so that you can see, is going to line up and it's going to be hitting him in the armpit. The goal here is I don't want to come across his body or up like this. If you've been here to the classes and we did our warm-ups, one of them is the bridge. If I imagine my head's at 12 o'clock here, I'm going to be bridging him to this like 11 o'clock point. So it's coming at this diagonal. And my goal is, you'll see how I do this, you'll see a bit better when we change our angle here in a second. When I force this, I'm bringing his weight over this arm. So that more of his weight goes over this arm, it means I'm lighter to turn with my hips. And because I'll have this arm trapped, it's going to be hard for him to base out. The thing that is tough for a lot of guys is I want to time my bridge with this hit. So I don't want to bridge and then hit him. And then the same vein, I don't want to hit him and then bridge. All right? I'm trying to hit him as this comes in and I hit, that's when I'm bridging. So all my powers and momentum's connecting at once. In the same vein, I'm not keeping my arm attached here. I'm actually going to have it away with my elbow to the mat and I'm going to swing it to generate that momentum. So I'm here, pinch, trap. Feet come nice and close so I do my big bridge. I'm going to hit him with my arm going to like 11 o'clock and at the apex of my bridge, I'm going to turn to my knees. All right, turn to my knees. And then I'm on top to start playing a closed guard position. We're going to show that now. I'll have my head face that way. It's here. And then you'll be able to hopefully see both sides there a wee bit better. So again, I'm here. My opponent's on a cross face. I'm pinching with my arm, locking in, nice and tight. I'm bringing my feet. You won't be able to see my feet here, but all I'm doing is just bringing my feet flat, nice and close. And they're kind of close together, like hip length. I'm not bringing them out really wide. It should feel nice and natural. And again, it's this arm's chopping like this. If you lift this hand off the mat just a wee bit, you'll see. It's going to be like this motion to here. So I start low and build that. And as soon as I build that, as soon as that connection hits, and I'm going to this 11 o'clock, so I'm not coming across his waist, I'm not coming up, I'm coming into his armpit. As if I'm trying to force his head, again, if my head's at 12 o'clock to 11 o'clock, and as soon as that lands, I'm hitting my bridge. See how that's getting his weight coming this way. And then if I really commit, and at the top of my bridge, I'm going to turn to my knees. So pinch, lock, head comes in tight, feet nice and close to my butt, ready to get a lot of power to my bridge. I'm going to hit this, and at the same time, when I make that connection, I bridge, and then at the top, I turn to my knees. And then if we shuffle back in here, and then I would immediately be able to start doing, my opponent will probably be in close guard, I would immediately start trying to stand up, break his close guard, and then I'm back to like kind of what all the other videos have done. So we kind of nearly have gone like full circle back to close guard, which was the first video, and then you can look through the kind of how do I pass his guard now, how do I get side control, how do I now mount my opponent and get the strong position. So that's nearly a good drill to do if you've done the course. When you get to this point, is get a partner And do that whole sequence. You mean stand up from close guard, pass the guy's guard, control him inside control, you come to mount, then they do an escape, and then they do the same thing to you. So we'll show one more time, and then we'll move on to the next escape. So I'm here, my opponent's going to from crossface, I'm clamping, coming nice and tight, hand's going to come here, and my feet are coming really close to my butt here. My heels are coming as close to my butt as I can manage, so I can generate a lot of power. I'm coming this way and trying to go to this like 11 o'clock diagonal position, not across his back, not up this way. And as I make that connection, my feet are going to push hard, and I'm going to, at the apex of my kind of bridge, I'm going to turn to my knees. And I turn to my knees, and then I can start trying to escape close guard. We'll look at our next escape. So that works well, because it's like, that's good if my opponent, if you come back to close guard, is like got a cross face, and he's like really committed, especially if he's trying really hard. I might be able to catch him while he's kind of committed this one. But there's going to be situations where my opponent either isn't committing his arm, he's like this, or he's like strong, or if I do flat bridge, he is ready. And every time I go to hit this bridge, he's like switching his arms and basing that arm out, and I'm unable to trap him. I mean, that kind of stuff. So the bridging row is going to be more timing based than this one. This escape, which is called our elbow escape, is probably the most effective mount escape. It's probably the one most people know and regularly execute. Alright, so for this, we'll just start with Ewan sitting really far up. I could do this even if he was in like a cross face and he was really low, but just so we can see what's going on, he's going to sit up nice and tall. Again, it's important that my hips are over his hips. So again, if he was sitting on my chest, I'd be walking backwards. What's going to happen here? It's going to look a bit difficult, like I'm really reaching because he's sitting up. But if he was really low here, it would make this connection I'm going to make would be really natural. So I'm here. I'm going to pick one. My arms are really tight. I'm going to pick, say, we'll go on the right side just for the drill. My left arm's going to come across. My elbow's going to his hip on my left hand side, and my right hand's just kind of cupping around his other hip. I'm going to stack my hands on top, so my free hand's going on top, and I'm going to slip my elbow inside his knee here. Alright? From here, I want to do like a kind of hip escape motion, but it's really important when I do this hip escape motion that I don't turn too much on my side. My goal is to have my knees or my legs pointed towards the side my hands are stacked. So my hands are stacked on my right hand side, I want my knees to point that way. So I'm just doing like enough of a hip escape. But you see my knees now are not like pointing that way. They could kick towards the right rather than kicking towards the roof. So I just bring my feet to the mat, nice and close to my butt, and I just kind of push off my hips, and I just turn my knees. My shoulder will come slightly off the mat. It's kind of unavoidable, but I don't want to turn on my side. If I turn on my side to do this, it will make sense, but my opponent's going to start trying to take my back. Just like we did in the last video. Alright, so it's really important I don't turn on my side. If you're actually off me for a second. So when I'm here, I'm here, my elbow's stacked. I just want to like do a hip escape and turn like this. If I do it towards the camera, I'm like this. I just bring my feet on the mat like before, and I'm just turning my hips out so my knees point the same way my hands are stacked. So if I'm on like the cover of FIFA or something and I'm gonna kick a football like this. So my legs are faced this way, but I'm trying to keep my shoulders as flat as they can. They're not gonna be completely flat, but I don't want to be like on my side where I'm showing my partner my back. Alright? So we come the same side, like this. We'll actually rotate this way because I'm gonna go on this side. That makes sense. So again, here, hands will be stacked, elbows coming on the inside. I'm gonna hip and just turn slightly. It's important now that my bottom leg, so my right leg here in this sense, is like flat to the mat. If it starts coming over his leg, this isn't gonna work. So it's flat, and I'm gonna use it to just drive his foot out a bit. This will depend on body types and flexibility. See here, I kind of can't catch Ewan's foot. So if that happens, I'm gonna drive my foot out. Now my foot's gonna step over, and I'm using my heel to like scrape the front of his foot. So it comes in between my legs like this. A bunch of stuff might happen here if you come back out. Sometimes I might just drive this under and his leg might just slip on top as I drive. Amazing. Sometimes, depending on the situation, if his leg's further back, I might just be able to step with this heel and not really have to use this other leg at all. But if I feel like I can't reach that, if I drive this leg out flat, it's gonna give me a better angle to catch with my heel and peel in. When I peel it in, I'm just gonna be catching just his ankle, like in between my legs, and pinching my knees together like this. All right, I'm looking in like kind of pointing here. We would be keeping our hands nice and tight the whole time, so I'll show it properly. And here like this, I would be turning slightly on my side, using this leg to drive out, peel, and catch. Now that I've cut his ankle, I want to do the same thing. I want to catch his knee line here, which just means I want my legs to cover his knees. I'm keep my elbow still on the inside, so I'm going to be able to start pushing and like putting pressure on his knee here. Not like in a way that's going to hurt him, but be able to manipulate the point of his knee. A lot of guys will just try and push this knee in between my legs. See how that's really slow? Put my knee back there. It's always a good thing in jiu-jitsu, a good mantra, to move yourself rather than move your opponent. You have more control over how you move yourself than you do over your opponent in a lot of different scenarios. So when I'm here, I'm not going to try and push his knee all the way in between my legs. I'm going to try and bring my knee up to my chest, and that'll help catch his knee instead. What'll help is currently his knee's flat on the mat, so if I try to push it or drive my knee, it can be difficult. I'm going to use my toes slightly and like lift, use this elbow and lift this knee just ever so slightly off the mat, just a tiny bit. That's enough. And as that happens, I'm going to pull my knee tight and I'm going to catch his knee line like this. All right, so come back. I'm here. I'm going to have this cut. I'm going to lift, push, and I catch his knee line. And I can drive down. I'm not really going to be able to pinch my legs together too much here, but I'm going to have this knee line caught. One more time. So again, I'm here. I'm like this. I'm going to lift slightly. I do that by using my toes on the mat and pointing my knees up and using my elbow to pry it open slightly. And then I can switch. All I'm going to do when I get here is I'm currently on my right hip. I'm going to switch and get on my left hip like this. All right. And we're going to switch sides completely now so that you can see what's going on. So we'll just go. So I just want to switch out facing that way. Perfect. So I'll do the full escape. So come back. You won't be able to see too well because we're on the other side. Just shuffle back and it's camera frame hopefully. So I'm here. I'm gonna get on my side. I'm pushing the knee. I peel my knee up. I trap his ankle. I push. I trap his knee. I switch onto my left hip. So I'm facing this way. Now I have him in what we call half guard, which we didn't cover in the course, but is a very popular position in jiu-jitsu. You'll find yourself here a lot. From here, I'm doing the same thing with my arm. So my arm before was posting, my left arm was across and my hand was stacked. Now I'm just switching. So my right arm's across and my left elbow stacked. Here it's kind of difficult because Ewan's like sitting back so that you can see what's going on. This connection doesn't make it, I'm kind of reaching. But in reality, he'd probably be really tight. And then if you lift your arm up here, you can see that this connection's really like obvious and easy to make. He'll be coming towards me. He's just sitting back here so we can see everything that's happening for the drill. I'm in like this, and all I'm gonna do is wedge this knee out open with my elbow. And I'm gonna start to pull my knee out. As soon as my kneecap's free, I can start to just bring my feet on the mat, turn my hips out, free my foot, and now I'm back in close guard. All right, show one more time from this angle. Actually, we'll show from this angle this time. Perfect, so I'm here. Now you'll really be able to see, I'm framing. Yeah, you lean slightly forward. Yeah, perfect, that'll be good. So I'm here like this. I'm framing on this hip, stacking my hand. I turn slightly on my side. I start to peel this knee. My foot might just come underneath like this, or I might have to, you step back out there for a second. I might have to use this feature and trap, use my foot to peel this in. Now I push on the knee line and cover. Now I switch here, so I'm on the other side. Now I'm driving, using my elbow here to open and my knees coming to my chest. Same idea as on the other side. I'm just opening the knee and pulling my knee to my chest. From here, I'm gonna use my foot on the mat and just bring my hips flat, free my leg, and then I can put him back in close guard. I'll show this now from a couple angles, a bit more realistically, as if Ewan was actually like really tight holding up. Because again, in that scenario, he was sitting up so you can see. Usually, even if my opponent's got like a strong cross face, he's putting pressure through. My hand's coming across. I'm stacking. I'm switching, catching, driving. I can switch. I drive, and then I switch, and I free my leg here. All right, one more time from this front angle. Actually, we'll do one from this angle, and then we'll do one where you can see my legs and the footwork I'm doing. So again, he's controlling me nice and tight. Left hand's coming across the hip. Right hand stacking, and I'm using my right elbow just to help open his knee a wee bit here. I'm bringing my feet on the mat and switching my hips, but not showing in my back and coming on my side. So I'm like on the cover of FIFA, I can kick in that direction. I'm driving my bottom knee out, maybe I'll come straight under his leg, amazing, I'll catch. If I don't come under his leg, I'm using my far heel to step over and peel in, pinching my knees together. Get very tight, that's fine. I'm gonna drive my knee, and again, I'm trying to lift up, and I'm pulling my knee to my chest. Now I can just switch. This might take a wee second to switch, especially if you're driving a lot of weight, but I'm going from being on my right hip to being on my left hip. I switch my hand, so my left hand was across his hips, now as my right hand's across the hip. I'm just driving open this knee and pulling my knee to my chest again. The only thing that might happen, semi-common, is that I'll not be able to free my foot. A lot of guys, when they start, they try and just pull their foot out, but if the guy's really close to me, that can be difficult. So here, what's gonna happen is I'm gonna point my toes on the mat. I'm gonna rotate my foot to the left, and my head's gonna come to the right. So as my head comes to the right, it's easier to swipe that out. Essentially what's happening here is my foot's stuck like this. I can't pull my knee to my chest. I point my foot down, and I'm gonna rotate it like this. I can only go so far in this situation before I have to like make it up with my body mechanics. So when I rotate like this, I'm gonna turn my head, and that'll let my legs circle. The more I turn onto my side, the easier it's gonna be a circle. So I'm in that last tiny wee section where I pull my knee out to here, my foot's stuck, I can't pull my knee to my chest, I rotate my head to the right, and I can circle my leg up. One last time, we'll do it so you can see the feet, and then we'll cut up there. So again, I'm here, here's a strong crossface, left hand's coming across the hips, right hand stacked on top. Elbow on the inside, I'm shifting, so I kick towards him like feet foot, I'm driving my knee, maybe he'll slip underneath straight away, maybe I'll use my other foot to catch and peel. I catch his ankle, pinch my knees together. Now I'm gonna lift up slightly, get his knee off the mat, and I'm pulling my right knee towards me like this, so I'm catching his knee line. Now I can switch my hips and face the other way. This is what we call half guard in jiu-jitsu, but we want to get our closed guard back, so I'm gonna do the same thing. My right hand's now across his hip, with my other hand stacked, and my left elbow's inside his knee. I'm gonna wedge his knee open as I drive my knee to my chest, and now I'm nearly all the way back in closed guard, my foot's stuck, I'm pointing my toes on the mat, my head goes the opposite way so I can circle it, and now I'm back here. If I got my opponent's hands on the mat, I can start immediately sitting up and attacking like we did in the first set of videos. So there are our escapes that we worked on today. Again, remember, keep your elbows tight, your chin tucked, your hands close here. If you grapevines, make sure you escape so you can get power through your hips to do your escapes. If you're sitting high on my chest, make sure we shoulder walk, so again we can use our hips power and momentum and ability to move to do our escapes. If he's committing both his hands to one side, whether it's a crossface or sometimes an attack on my arms, that's when I do my big hip and bump, my big bump, my big bridge and roll, or my escape. Again, I trap with my hand, I punch across at the same time as I time my bridge. A very consistent escape, and probably more consistent and available in more situations, will be my elbow escape. Again, stack your arms, keep them close, get on your side, don't expose your back, trap his foot, trap his ankle, trap his knee, switch sides, free your foot if you need to, and get back to close guard. Great stuff today, and in the next set of videos we'll be working our back attacks and our back defense. Thanks so much guys, thank you.